If you're just joining us, you've missed a very interesting conversation, I like to think so anyway, with Nigel Farage, the Reform UK leader. Your reaction to that still coming in on 0344 499 1000. In particular, talking to him about some of the other topics we're talking about today, including the Tory leader Kemi Badenoch warning that the government's target of hitting net zero emissions by 2050 is an impossible fantasy, her words, that can only be achieved with a serious drop in our standard of living or by bankrupting us. I mean, the answer is bankrupting us. I'd love to hear your response to her speech. She's been giving that speech in central London. Do you welcome any sinner that repenteth, or is it a little bit too little too late? As Nigel Farage said, and a caller has pointed out earlier, that actually, well, nothing's changed for her to change this view. So why did she support this policy only a few months ago, but now she's questioning it? And can you trust the Tories on this issue? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate, of course, and text costs £1, standard network rate message. You can also leave a message at the bottom of our YouTube page. Remember, of course, if you've not been watching us on YouTube, we do still exist in video. I brush my hair, not very well, put Lippy on for you. If you want to take a look, you also get to see the wonderful, the lovely and brightly jumpered journalist and broadcaster Benjamin Butterworth, who has returned to the fold after a hiatus where apparently there was another broadcaster involved. He left me for a rival broadcaster, but is back. Very good morning once again.
And if you have me back, I'll put Lippy on next time too.
I thought that was part of the contract deal, but I'm just saying. Anyway, other things we're going to talk about today. Israel has unleashed its heaviest strikes on Gaza since the ceasefire of Hamas began. This comes as talks on further Hamas hostages releases have stalled. The extensive strikes were targeting Hamas terrorist officials. Not that that's been mentioned by the BBC and Sky very much. They are talking about we've been told, more than 400 people who have died or are still missing. That's according to Hamas officials. They don't mention, of course, how many of those will have actually been the targets of that operation. At least 10, we know, Hamas leadership figures were actually killed in that strike. They would have been surrounded, each of them, by numerous Hamas fighters. So we can certainly say that a good number of those people who were killed were clear military targets. This despite, of course, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy accusing Israel yesterday of breaking international law by blocking humanitarian aid from entering Gaza. He is, of course, as usual, as he is pretty much about everything, wrong on that. Also going to be talking about the millions of people who are going to be summoned for annual weigh-ins at the GP under new NHS guidelines to tackle obesity. All that coming up, plenty more besides. Benjamin Butterworth, I mean, because we spoke to Nigel Farage at 10 o'clock, it's normally the time when we would be having a good yap about the biggest stories in town, so now it's good to be able to get a chance to talk about that. Let's talk first of all about Kemi Badenoch's speech, because we know what she's had to say. We haven't yet got to what Liz Kendall is going to say on benefits, but we'll come to that. But in terms of Kemi Badenoch, look, you're on the left, you're on the woke left, where you all still think this stuff is sane. I mean, it never was sane. It was always mad. It was always going to bankrupt us. It was always unachievable, impossible, too costly, and involve us getting poorer. Is it a good thing that the Tory leader has woken up to this?
No, naturally, I don't think it is. And I also don't think it's where the country is. Because if you look at polling, especially before the last election, climate change was one of the top concerns.
It's not.
Boris Johnson understood that.
It's not.
It is. We're a green and pleasant land, and it's on people's radar very strongly.
It just isn't. There's ways of asking questions in polls. You know, if you're answering a poll like, are you concerned or not concerned about climate change? You have to say you are. The vast majority of people in this country, it's not in their top 1,000 issues.
Well, I think as the world starts to face the real consequences.
Wait a second, clarify. Are we burning?
Yes,
Are we burning? Are we going to be in drought, or are we drowning? It's so difficult to keep up with what. Are we?
Yes, all
Any
of those. We've had many of the hottest temperatures ever recorded in annual.
Well,
in
recorded
years
since 1880.
Have been in the last 20
coming out of an ice
years.
age. That was what we expect to happen.
We've seen incredible flooding. Half of Bangladesh was flooded last year.
Half of Bangladesh is flooded every year. There has been no increase in flooding. There has been no increase in flooding. Next.
When I was
go with wildfires. Have we had an increase in wildfires?
Well, I haven't mentioned wildfires, but
are you going to go with wildfires? Because that's the next one, because we haven't had an increase in wildfires.
Wildfires in January is pretty concerning, quite frankly.
Not unusual, and no increase in wildfires around the world.
Worse than any other year.
No, they're not worse than any other year. No, they're not.
About 18 months ago, I was in the foothills of the Himalayas, where they're saying their existence is being threatened because of the flooding that's happening from the mountains melting. this is incredibly
the ice is all melting, apart from the fact that it's not all melting.
Well, but it is. It's incredibly dangerous. The overwhelming majority of scientists agree.
No, they don't.
And the thing is that...
Again,
what
made up stuff.
They do. They absolutely agree.
97%. Or was it 99 this week? It's so difficult to keep up.
I mean,
made up stat.
I would sooner listen to the 97% or the 99 than the 1%.
Stat. Not true.
Look, the fact is that I think this offers a great opportunity for Britain, because one of the things we lead on is that...
Sorry, Ed Miliband, I didn't realise I'd invited you to the studio.
Yeah, you got lucky. We have an incredibly educated workforce, very good at technology, and we're actually...
great at innovation.
We're still a major industrial nation because we produce a lot of but we do, because we produce a lot of high-value things like arms and planes. And that's why I think we should lead on this stuff, because the technology, there's trillions of dollars to be made.
I am all for technology that is cleaner than old fossil fuels and getting rid of coal and things like that. Absolutely, all for it. However, not with a random target. 2050, that's a round number, or 2030, that's a round number, and not when it makes us poorer, it deindustrialises us, means that our energy bills are higher, which they are, means that our energy supply is insecure, which it is, and means that we're reliant on getting energy from abroad, and we're less secure defence-wise, because we can't produce our own, virgin steel. We can't actually afford to run manufacturing, and we're not able to keep the lights on of our own accord. We have to import energy. That is not what a first world country does.
Well, that's why solar panels and wind power are essential to try and fix that. We're an island. Wind is fantastic.
And when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine on a cold winter's day when we need energy more than ever, what do you propose we do?
Well, that's why we should have built nuclear 10 years ago.
We should have,
still need that, and it's an efficient form of energy.
We also need gas. 80% of our energy is not renewable energy.
That's why we need to change it.
There is no technology. There is no renewable technology that will replace the need for gas. The crucial gas and oil that is actually in existence yet.
Well, I mean, why have our bills gone through the roof? It's because we were so reliant on places like Russia. And
we didn't get our gas or oil from Russia.
It's the Ukraine war that's put those prices up. Because
it hasn't happened in America, where they've been fracking and they've been drilling for oil, and they've been, even though they talk a good game on net zero under Joe Biden, they still became the world's biggest net exporter of oil and gas. We stopped drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea. We didn't frack under our own nation, and we've got the ridiculous thing where we're relying on solar and wind, which we then have to double up to have the gas storage and the nuclear power to back it up for when it doesn't work. So we're paying twice for the same energy.
I mean, I do think that not going for North Sea oil and not issuing those licences that are currently going through courts about whether we should...
Well, that's a net zero policy.
I'm afraid I think that's a mistake.
Well, that's a net zero policy.
It's reported that Rachel Reeves also thinks that's a mistake. She wants the tax revenue from it.
She can add up too, apparently. All that experience as an economist, wink, wink.
But I think, there are so many technologies that this country can develop. Recently, I was with a Scottish entrepreneur who's developing motor cars made by fast cars, that is, racing cars, made by hydrogen, which is an incredibly efficient technology if we can develop it.
And when it's developed, let's move to that.
That would transform the impact of airplanes.
It's a when. But you do realise that we would hit our net zero targets if we basically closed down all our industry. No one had a fridge, no one had a car, couldn't get a train. We just gave up all of that. We went back and lived in the woods. And if we did get something, we imported it from China, where it's made solar panels and wind turbines in a coal-fired factory. We would actually hit our net zero targets if we did that. Would that be achievable? Would that be a good thing?
No, because
that's the only way you're going to do it.
What we have to do is change the technology we're using so that it doesn't have the impact on the environment. Even China has net zero target for 2060 and to peak in emissions in 2030.
They haven't actually got a date for it, and they're just playing along. They think it's hilarious because they know that the West is bankrupting itself, and they're supplying all of the electric cars and the solar panels and the things, and they are able to do it all much more cheaply. They've built more coal-fired power stations than they're building solar stations. I mean, come on. You guys are living in a fantasy world.
I don't think so. And I think it's one of the things that's going to make Britain rich over the next decade.
Good luck with that. Just fine. Are you one of those, with all due respect, you know I love you, idiot young people, but this is not necessarily a bad thing for the gene pool, who's planning not to have children because, the earth is dying, because my only hope about that is Darwinian style. We are going to improve the human gene pool when all the stupid people's genes die out.
Well, the rest of humanity's decided whether I'll have kids, because I don't have a relationship.
There are still ways of doing it.
I don't plan to have kids, but I actually think we need more children in this country because our birth rate has fallen dramatically.
That's another topic we talk about. Right, I'm going to move on to something else. Let's go on to benefits. Can we sustain having 1 in 10 working age Brits claiming sickness benefits in this country? Liz Kendall, in about an hour and a bit's time, as the Work and Pension Secretary, is going to announce her cuts. As Lydia Smith pointed out, we're talking about 5-6 billion quid in cuts to the welfare bill. It's a drop in. I mean, it's desirable, but nevertheless a drop in the ocean of what we need. How many of those 1 in 10 working age Brits should not be on sickness benefits is the question.
Well, yeah, it's a difficult question. I obviously don't know the answer to that.
I'd say a lot of them.
But, I mean, there's clearly a problem. It is unsustainable because the sums are expected to go up to about £70 billion in a couple of years. Now, that will be almost triple what it was pre-pandemic. And you have to ask the question, why is Britain the only major economy to have not returned to the employment levels pre-COVID? And I do think it is, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, said this at the weekend, there clearly is some overdiagnosis. And the temptation is to think that overdiagnosis is a kind of kind thing. We are a sympathetic society. But actually, if you're telling people that their illness is so severe or so unresolvable that they can't go back to work, you're denying them the thing that brings you most satisfaction, that brings you most reward as a human being.
Self-respect and self-esteem, putting food on the table that you've paid for. But this is the thing, isn't it? A lot of people talk about it being kind, but it isn't a kindness. And the GPs who are the good GPs, I remember my mum's a GP, I've said this before now, she'd have patients who'd come in and they go, oh, no, not you, because I know you're not going to sign me off sick. Well, no, because you shouldn't be signed off sick. But an awful lot of GPs, again, it's a phone consultation or a Zoom consultation, and then it's a phone call with the benefits office, and people can look up online. You can literally Google, what do I need to say to get PIP payments? And you're never going to be asked to work again. You're on these payments. And a lot of people say, oh, well, it's only like 8-9 grand a year. Well, yeah, but it opens you up to a world of other payments, like the Motability Scheme and the like. I mean, the fact that you've got... it was at £8.8 million, this is Talk exclusive we've got today, £8.8 million of taxpayers' money down the back of the sofa in terms of the welfare budget, but nevertheless, 8.8 million quid being spent on driving lessons for PIP claimants. I mean, I've been paying for my daughter's driving lessons. They're unbelievably expensive. You're sitting there going, for the love of God, please learn how to drive quicker. By the way, you have to wait in London, 6-month wait to get a driving test, and then she's had her driving test cancelled. She's trying to get another one. I mean, it is unbelievably expensive to learn to drive. And we're paying for other people to be able to get driving lessons. What's that about?
The point of the independence payments is to try and let people, many of people on that are in work, and it's in order to help them do a job.
Again, this is another one of the lies.
I think it's the majority.
No, it's 1 in 6.
Oh, there was a politician yesterday saying that.
I know, lots of people say, and again, even when people talk about people being in work where they're on benefits, most of them are working 1 day a week or 2 days a week. Oh, what a surprise! You can't support your family and pay your rent on 2 days' work a week.
I mean, there is another side to this. When it becomes the fact that it's definitely true that most people on universal credit do some paid work, but actually part of the problem is that they do. Most people on universal credit are in employment. That's definitely true. You can check it. I'm sure you'll correct me if it is wrong. And the problem is that wages have been too low compared to the cost of living, and therefore you end up having the state top it up. And so I do think the increase in the minimum wage might go some way to help that. But, that's one of the key problems, and I think we have to
But isn't the main issue that if you don't need to be on benefits, if you could take a job, just maybe not a job that you want or a job that pays as much as you want, not as convenient for you, that you shouldn't get any benefits at all? It seems to me to be very, very simple. Well, here's a job. Here's, hello, Benjamin, you've lost your job. Well, here's a job. Well, it's not, it's not sitting in a studio talking. It's not writing. I'm afraid it's, it's digging up the road, or it's working as a washer-upper in a restaurant. Well, that if you can't find another job that you want, that's the job you're going to have to take, because I don't see why I should pay for you not to work.
Yeah, I mean, Ronald Reagan said the best form of social welfare is a job. and clearly he has a point. You know, that saying lives on. I do think that the government understands that, though, because the public accounts are so severe that there is no choice. You cannot let this grow. And
except that Labour politicians will be really wary of upsetting their base even more than they've already done.
When we talk about will there be a big Labour backlash, I don't think there will, because, you know, the set of MPs, I know a great many of the new Labour MPs, they're quite young, they're very, in layman's terms, Blairite.
Most of them didn't expect to get elected.
Indeed. 6 months earlier, they didn't expect to be selected in many cases. They're a very agreeable bunch of people. They're very much on Keir Starmer's side. And
they're ambitious.
I don't think they're going to be causing problems, not when they know they've got 4 years of ministerial opportunities.
There is also the point that, you know, there's 400 of them, and basically, you know, you need an awful lot for there to be a rebellion to that serve any purpose. So you're kind of rebelling for the sake of it. But you can put out a tweet and make yourself look like you care.
And it's no surprise Dan Abbott is opposed to it, but I'm not sure her maths was ever so good.
No, as a general rule, if Dan Abbott's opposed to something, I support it.
Can I make one other point, which is this saves £5 billion if they succeed. But the triple lock on pensions had £11 billion this year, and that no party is pledging to deal with.
No.
Now, there are many pensioners, about 25%, who are worth more than £1 million. I don't dispute they worked hard for that. But when you're looking at public finances, can we afford to spend more on pensions than defence, education,
and especially young people, you know, again, the generational divide there is an issue. However, also, our state pension is one of the lowest in the Western world.
Except that we've structured it slightly different to other countries, so the difference between private pension and state pension slightly distorts that figure. But 11 billion quid extra goes on the pension costs this year because of the triple lock. Yeah. And the generation in Britain that's benefited most in the last 10 years is people that are retired. Now, I don't resent
that they managed to buy a home. They didn't have to pay for uni fees. They managed to buy a home for a pittance, which is now worth a lot.
Precisely, and you just...
my parents' generation, I mean, they've cleaned up.
A serious government that was being honest about what's unsustainable would confront that.
That would be interesting.
But I don't think it's likely to happen.
Can we just mention also the 20,000 civil service credit cards that have been frozen, spending crackdown. Basically, been spending a load of money on stuff they shouldn't have been spending on, and basically everyone's going to have it taken away, and you have to reapply and justify why you need it. I can understand some civil servants working abroad would need that. I have to say, the cheek of some of these people, some of the things they've been spending money on. I want to know, though, is anyone going to be sacked for their dodgy expenses? Because you get sacked anywhere else for dodgy expenses.
Yes, indeed. And I mean,
it's our money.
There was a story in the Daily Express about sort of 40 mobile phones being lost and replaced in one department every day.
I've never lost a mobile phone.
No.
I've literally never lost a mobile phone.
No, I've smashed a fair few, but I've never lost them, right? You know, you drop them, but I don't lose them. And so, you know, you wonder whether there is a lax culture that they just know these costs will be covered.
Wonder. I know. Yes. I absolutely know. I also want to talk about, I mean, what's going on internationally, Ukraine and Gaza. Also, just finally, those two astronauts, finally, from the International Space Station, are returning to Earth after 9 months. They've been on the International Space Station all that time. 10 o'clock tonight, UK time, they will be touching down. This, of course, is Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams. They left for the International Space Station on 5th of June last year. Now, they're supposed to be there 8 days. There's been so much talk about how they've been stranded there. This is such an utter media lie. They haven't been stranded there. There was another, you know, a rocket went up and brought other people, and there were 2 spaces, and they were allowed to come back if they wanted. But they stayed for a 6-month project. They stayed to do that project. So Elon Musk and Donald Trump saying, oh, you know, Biden wouldn't go and rescue them, and they turned down. But you're talking about hundreds of millions of pounds to bring back 2 astronauts early, when they were perfectly happy to stay in space and carry on the project.
Well, I hadn't realised that. I thought they simply couldn't work out how to get up there in time.
Absolutely no. And they've got an escape capsule there. If they needed to come back at any time, they could have done that. This has just been turned into this sort of media circus.
I tell you what, I mean, former astronauts make a lot of money. These 2 are a lot more famous than they ever could have dreamed. So I suspect the rest of their lives will be more interesting for it.
Absolutely. We're going to talk to our space boffin. I love our space boffin, Andy Lound, about all that later on.